The two airport cops thought they were just detaining a suspicious passenger. What they didn't realize was they were manhandling the highest-ranking woman in the FBI. An entire country was watching. Her heels clicked with a steady rhythm across the polished floor of Reagan National Airport. No entourage, no fanfare, just Veronica Ellison, 53 years old, freshly appointed director of the FBI, walking with the quiet presence of someone who'd spent her whole life learning when to speak and when to observe. It was 9:38 p.m., the D.C. air sticky with early summer heat even inside the terminal. She had just landed from Seattle. Red-eye briefings, black coffee, and classified updates. All she wanted was her driver, a long shower, and maybe a few hours of sleep before facing another morning of briefings. She moved quickly, but not with urgency. The suit she wore, a slate-gray blazer and pants, crisply pressed, wasn't about style, it was about presence. Her shoulder-length hair was neatly pulled back, and in her left hand was the briefcase that never left her side. Inside, a folder with security clearance, so high most of the country didn't even know the documents existed. She passed gate 37, eyes scanning calmly. That's when she noticed them. Two airport officers, white males, both mid-30s, standing by a service kiosk. She didn't make eye contact, didn't alter her pace, but she saw the nudge one gave the other, the nod in her direction, subtle but not to her. Veronica didn't slow down. Years of experience had taught her when to ignore stares and when to prepare. She heard them before she felt them. "Excuse me, ma'am." One called, "You traveling alone tonight?" She stopped, turned toward them. "Yes." "Can we ask where you're headed?" She paused, not out of fear but out of calculation. "Is there a problem?" Her voice was measured, soft but solid. They looked her up and down. One had a thick Virginia accent. The other just stared, thumb hooked casually near his belt. Too close to the button. "You match a description," one said. She blinked. "What description?" "Middle-aged black woman. Gray suit. Briefcase. Maybe carrying sensitive material. We're checking it out." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "You mean I matched the description of a federal employee heading home after work?" The taller one stepped slightly forward. "Ma'am, we're going to need to take a look at that briefcase." She held it tighter. "I don't think you understand. I'm Veronica Ellison, director of the FBI." There was a beat of silence. Then he smirked. "Oh, yeah." He crossed his arms. "You got any ID to back that up?" She reached into her inner jacket pocket and pulled out her credentials. Government-issued photo, bearing unmistakable authority. She held it out without a word. He didn't take it. Instead, he glanced at his partner and gave a chuckle. "You can't just wave some badge and expect us to believe you." Now, people were watching. A teenage girl with earbuds had paused her walk. A woman pushing a stroller was giving the officers a long stare. Someone pulled out a phone. "I'm not waving anything," Veronica said calmly. "I'm identifying myself as is protocol." "Protocol's not your call tonight," the second officer snapped. "We'll be taking you in for questioning. You can explain everything downtown." Veronica didn't flinch, but her lips pressed together. She looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at the fear creeping into the edge of her breath. Then she spoke again. "Call the Homeland Security liaison. Or better yet, call your supervisor. Right now." But they didn't move. Instead, one of them reached for her briefcase. She took a step back. "Do not touch that. You have no authority to search." "Hands where I can see them." The command hit like a slap, loud, crude, public. They both stepped in now, crowding her. She didn't resist, but she didn't help them either. Her body was still, her voice clear. "You're making a mistake." But they weren't listening. The taller one grabbed her arm, pulled it behind her back. The other unclipped handcuffs from his belt. The briefcase slipped from her fingers and hit the ground with a thud. People gasped. Phones went up. But the officers didn't look around. They were locked in. She was officially detained. But one call, just one, was about to change the entire situation. Veronica didn't resist as the cold metal pressed into her wrists, but she didn't lower her eyes either. She stood tall, handcuffed, and surrounded by a silence that seemed heavier than the cuffs themselves. The taller officer leaned in. You got the right to remain silent, he mumbled, barely audible. Like even he didn't believe what he was saying. Do you know what you're doing? She asked him, her voice steady. You're unlawfully detaining a federal official on U.S. soil. The younger one, his name tag read M, Landry, snorted. Ma'am, we're trying to keep this airport safe. You being combative doesn't help your case. A small circle of onlookers had formed now, cameras lifted like shields. Veronica didn't look at them. Her eyes stayed locked on the men in front of her. I've shown you federal ID. I told you who I am. I'm not resisting. But if you continue this without contacting your superior or verifying credentials, you're walking into something neither of you is prepared to handle. Ma'am, you're done talking, Landry said. He motioned toward a bench nearby. She was escorted, still cuffed, and sat down hard. Her briefcase remained on the floor. Ignored. Her blazer was slightly pulled from one shoulder now, one button half torn from the struggle. A woman from the crowd called out, Yo, really arresting the FBI director? Landry turned and pointed. Keep walking. That only drew more eyes. Whispers were turning into murmurs. Phones were still rolling. Get her ID, the older officer muttered. Landry scooped up the badge and credentials she dropped. He stared at them, jaw moving slightly. His fingers hesitated on the document. He flipped it over once, then twice. Devin, he whispered. What? This looks real. Devin, the taller one, walked over and snatched the badge from his partner's hand. He looked at it, the photo, the raised seal, the clearance strip, then back at her face. Where'd you get this? He asked. But this time, the bark in his voice was gone. I didn't get it, she said, locking eyes with him. It was issued to me after a 28-year career in law enforcement. She tilted her head slightly. The same career that probably trained the people who trained you. For the first time, there was hesitation. Landry shifted on his feet. You could have just said, I did, she cut in. I said it 5 minutes ago. Then I showed you proof. You didn't care. You decided what you wanted to believe. Landry looked around. The crowd was growing. TSA agents were hovering now, clearly uncomfortable. A janitor stopped mopping a few feet away, watching quietly. Devin started to say something, but just then, a voice cracked through his walkie-talkie. Asterisk Terminal B security. We've got DHS inbound on site. Code 542. Agents en route. Asterisk. He froze. Looked at Landry. What's 542? The younger one asked, eyes darting. Devin swallowed. High-priority personnel mishandling. Suddenly, Veronica's words landed differently. Her face hadn't changed, but she leaned back slightly now, saying nothing. She didn't have to. Landry uncuffed her, fumbled with the keys, dropped them, picked them back up. This is just protocol, ma'am, he said quietly. She rubbed her wrists and looked at him. You need to stop saying ma'am like it cancels out everything you just did. Devin reached for the briefcase to hand it to her. She didn't take it. You don't touch classified materials without clearance. He froze, hand in midair. In that moment, the hallway felt like it was holding its breath. Veronica stood, adjusted her blazer. She looked them both in the eye. You better hope your chain of command is more prepared than you are. But it was already too late for both of them. The real agents were on their way. She stood in the middle of the terminal, not flanked by agents or press, but by humiliation, raw and quiet. Her hands were free now, but the marks in the cuffs were visible, a thin red outline around each wrist. Veronica flexed her fingers once. Then again, she didn't wince, but she felt it. The officers were clearly nervous now. Devin wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. Landry kept shifting from foot to foot, muttering to himself. They weren't saying much anymore. Nothing left to say. The terminal had gone from curious to tense. People were recording, not secretly, openly. They weren't just documenting. They were waiting to see what she would do. Veronica picked up her briefcase herself, dusted it off, locked the latch. Then a voice cut through the air. Excuse me, officers, what exactly is going on here? It was a man in his early 60s, black, with graying hair and a posture that said he'd served someone or something, for most of his life. He wore a worn denim jacket, and his eyes were sharper than they first appeared. "This woman says she's the FBI director," he said. "And I know for a fact she is. I watched her on C-SPAN just last week, testifying before the Judiciary Committee." Landry opened his mouth, but the man raised a hand. "No, don't talk. Just listen. Y'all dragged her down like she stole something. And I guarantee you, she's got more clearance in her left pocket than both of you got in your whole career." Veronica looked at the man. She gave him a nod, not of thanks, but of recognition. Like two people who understood the rules of a game most people didn't even know existed. Landry didn't respond. Devin turned and walked a few paces away, pretending to adjust his radio. Then someone else stepped up, a Latina woman, early 40s, Navy uniform, TSA supervisor badge on her chest. "Ma'am," she said softly to Veronica, "I'm sorry. They didn't inform us of any detention. We had no idea." Veronica's voice was calm. "You don't need to apologize for their mistake." The TSA agent turned toward the officers. "You detain a high-level federal official without contacting oversight." Devin tried to speak. She refused to comply. "No," Veronica said, loud enough for crowd. "I complied. I identified myself. I showed credentials. I did not raise my voice, did not resist, and I asked them to call for verification. They refused." The TSA agent looked stunned. "We're going to need a report. Immediately." But before anyone could respond, another voice entered the scene. Firm, clipped, no nonsense. Director Ellison. Two agents in dark suits rushed through the crowd. One had an earpiece. The other wore a badge around his neck that caught the light. Behind them, two more moving quickly, speaking into radios. Their jackets read Department of Homeland Security. The lead agent reached her first. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "I'm fine," she said. They weren't. He turned to the officers. "Who put hands on her?" Devin tried to explain, but the agent cut him off. "Stand down. Right now." Landry looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Devin looked at the cameras, then back at his own shoes. Homeland agents moved fast. One took a statement from the TSA supervisor. Another confirmed Veronica's identity with a secondary biometric scan. The air in the terminal shifted again, heavier, but quieter now, like the end of a long argument where one person realizes they were wrong the whole time. "I want security footage pulled from this concourse," the lead DHS agent said. "All angles. I want the body cam data from both of these officers. And I want someone from Internal Affairs waiting for them when they clock out." Devin muttered, "This is crazy." "No," the older black man said from the sidelines. "What's crazy is you thought you could treat her like just another black woman, and nobody would notice." Silence. Veronica stood tall, adjusted the strap on her briefcase. "I'd like to leave now." The agent nodded. "Of course. We'll escort you to your vehicle." She didn't look back at the officers, didn't pause for the cameras, just walked forward. But her silence wasn't forgiveness, and they knew it. The walk from the terminal to the black SUV parked outside felt longer than it should have. Veronica didn't speak. Her DHS escort kept a careful pace beside her, never asking questions, never trying to fill the silence. He didn't need to. Inside the vehicle, Agent Sonia Del Vecchio was already waiting, sharp, composed, and no nonsense. She'd been Veronica's detail, lead, since the Senate confirmation. Her voice was low and tight when she spoke. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" "No," Veronica replied, her tone neutral. "But I'm tired." Sonia glanced at her wrists, saw the red markings, then looked away. "I filed an emergency notice the second we got word." The terminal swarmed with press now. There are already 3 different video angles circulating. Veronica didn't flinch. Let them circulate. Sonia nodded slowly. They're scrambling to do damage control. Internal Affairs has already quarantined the officers. Veronica gave a small shake of her head. "They'll learn. That's not my concern right now." A pause. Sonia spoke again, softer this time. "That's the 3rd time in 4 months, Director. First the elevator at Quantico, then the background check mix-up before the Denver meeting. Now this. Veronica finally looked over at her. I keep receipts, Sonia. This one just happened to come with video. As the SUV pulled away from the terminal, silence hung between them again. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. The weight of history. The burden of constant proof. It wasn't new. It was just louder now. Halfway down George Washington Memorial Parkway, Veronica's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Director Ellison. The voice on the other end was gravelly, older. This is Judge Harlan Bixby. I'm calling from Arlington. Yes, sir. I saw the video. You handled that with restraint most people don't have. Just wanted you to know some of us saw it for what it was. Thank you, Your Honor. And if it matters, he added, my grandson just told me you're the first public official he's ever respected. Kid's 13. Thought you might want to hear that. Veronica exhaled. The first real breath she'd taken in hours. That does matter. More than you know. She ended the call, stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. Outside, the night rolled on like nothing happened. Inside, something had changed. The weight wasn't hers anymore. Back at the airport, things were unraveling fast. DHS agents had cordoned off the area near Gate 37. Reporters were being held behind a makeshift barrier. Airport PR officials scrambled with scripted statements. The two officers, Devin and Landry, were separated, seated in opposite corners of the staff security room. Landry had his head in his hands. Devin was pacing, fists clenching and unclenching. You think we're done? Landry whispered. Devin didn't answer. Then the door opened. A federal investigator walked in. No greeting, just a voice like gravel and ice. Both of you will remain off duty, effective immediately. Your badges and service weapons are suspended pending formal inquiry. You are not to speak to the media. You are not to contact the director in any way. Is that understood? Landry nodded, defeated. Devin scoffed but didn't speak. The investigator placed two sealed folders on the table. You'll each be given the opportunity to give your version. But let me be clear, this isn't going away. The woman you disrespected is not just the director of the FBI. She is a decorated federal servant with more counterterrorism clearances than the two of you have years in uniform. And the entire nation is watching. Landry whispered. We didn't mean. But you did, the investigator said, cutting him off. And that's the point. Back in the SUV, Veronica sat silently. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from her goddaughter in Florida. Asterisk, I'm so proud of you. Don't let them break you. They're not ready for you. Asterisk. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Sonia, she said. Yes, ma'am. Schedule a press briefing for tomorrow morning and call the Bureau's media unit. I'll write the statement myself. But what she planned to say wasn't just for the cameras. It was for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Hashtag the next morning. At exactly 9 a.m., Veronica stood behind a sleek podium in the FBI's press room in Washington, D.C. The seal behind her gleamed under the lights. Cameras lined the back of the room. Reporters shifted in their seats, quiet but buzzing with anticipation. Everyone wanted to hear her version of the incident that now had over 6 million views across 3 platforms. She wasn't wearing anger. She wasn't wearing pain. She wore a deep navy suit, iron smooth, not a thread out of place. Asterisk controlled. Deliberate. Asterisk. No teleprompter. She looked out across the room. Let's not waste time, she began. You've seen the footage. A pause. I was detained at Reagan National Airport last night by 2 uniformed officers. I was questioned, ignored, handcuffed, and accused of impersonating a federal official, despite identifying myself clearly and providing credentials. My words were dismissed. Her hands rested on the podium, not gripping, just placed. This is not the first time something like this has happened to me. It may not be the last. But it wasn't just about me. It was about how easy it still is in 2025 to see a black woman in a suit and not imagine FBI, but instead imagine a problem. She let that hang for a moment. My response today isn't about revenge. I don't want those officers destroyed. I want them educated. I want the system that trained them to stop teaching suspicion over service. The room was still. No one rustled a notebook. No fingers typed. I'm not asking for apologies. I already got those, on their knees in front of strangers, when they realized who I was. But that kind of regret doesn't come from conscience. It comes from consequence. And if our society only learns after being shamed, then we are still failing. She stepped back from the mic. I'll take a few questions. Hand shot up. The first, asterisk, Director Ellison. Do you believe race played a role in what happened last night? Asterisk. She looked straight at the reporter. If I'd been wearing the same suit, carrying the same briefcase, speaking with the same authority, but had a different face, then I believe I would have made it to my car in 5 minutes flat. Next question. Asterisk, do you plan to press charges? Asterisk. No, she said, because I want systemic change, not personal punishment. What happened to me is part of a pattern. I didn't make the pattern, but I've lived in it, and I'm not here to break 2 links. I'm here to melt the chain. One final question. Asterisk, how are you personally feeling today? Asterisk. Veronica's answer was short. Angry, but focused. She walked off without waiting for more. Later that day, the 2 officers were summoned to a private meeting inside the Department of Justice. Not for discipline yet, but for dialogue. Veronica chose to meet them herself. No cameras, no staff, just her and them in a plain conference room with a long table and a pitcher of water. Devin sat stiffly, arms folded. Landry looked like he hadn't slept. Veronica entered. No suit jacket, just a shirt, sleeves rolled up, folder in hand. She didn't sit. Let's talk, she said. They glanced at each other. I'm not here to yell, she continued. I don't need to make a scene, but I want you to understand what you actually did yesterday. She opened the folder and pulled out a photo. This is me at age 30. My first day at Quantico. She laid down another. This is me after making my first arrest. Then another. This is my father, a civil rights attorney who spent his whole life arguing that systems could change. She looked up. And yesterday you told him he was wrong. Landry lowered his eyes. Devin swallowed hard. You thought I was a threat because I didn't fit the image in your heads of what power looks like. But here's the truth. Power doesn't look like one thing. It doesn't sound like one accent. And it damn sure doesn't only walk around in one color. They didn't speak. Maybe they couldn't. Veronica stepped back, collected her folder. You made a choice based on assumptions. That's human. But if you wear a badge, being human isn't enough. You have to be better than your instincts. She walked out. But the lesson she left behind would live longer than any punishment ever could. By noon, the headlines were everywhere. FBI director confronts officers in closed-door meeting. Veronica Ellison speaks without anger, delivers with impact. Clips of her speech played on repeat. Talk shows debated every word. Civil rights leaders called it a turning point. Her face, stoic, composed, unsmiling, became a symbol not of victimhood, but control. Yet Veronica didn't stay in the spotlight. She returned to work. She didn't grant interviews or appear on nightly news panels. She wasn't interested in becoming a moment. She wanted the moment to mean something. In the days that followed, the Department of Justice announced a new training initiative led by Ellison herself. Focus on identification protocols, bias response, and officer discretion. A quiet revolution was already in motion. Not loud, not dramatic, deliberate. She received hundreds of messages. From strangers, from fellow officers, from parents who'd shown their kids her press conference and said, "That's how you carry yourself." But one letter stood out. It came in a plain white envelope, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Dear Director Ellison, asterisk, I watched what happened at the airport. I'm a retired police officer. White, grew up in Ohio. I've spent most of my life thinking racism was something ugly in other people. Not me, asterisk. I now realize how wrong I've been. Asterisk the way you stood there. How you spoke. It didn't make me angry. It made me ashamed, Asterisk. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man I thought I already was. Thank you. She kept that letter in her desk drawer. Never showed it to anyone. Didn't need to. Meanwhile, the two officers, Devin and Landry, were reassigned to desk duty. They were undergoing mandatory review. The press moved on, but their names for a while were etched into public memory. Landry later requested to join one of the Bureau's new training pilots. Devin didn't. Their paths were splitting, even if they didn't realize it yet. Back inside the Bureau, Veronica sat at her desk, scanning over files. A knock at the door. Sonia stepped in. Your next appointment's here. A group of high school students from a civics program in Arlington. They're early. Veronica stood. Good. Let's not waste their time. She stepped into the hallway, where 20 students stood, some whispering, some staring wide-eyed. One boy near the front, tall, lanky, freckles, blurted, "You really took down 2 cops just by talking." She smiled faintly. "That's not what I did." Another student raised a hand. "So what did you do?" Veronica looked at them. She didn't give a speech. She didn't quote law. She said, "I made them see me, not the version they made up in their heads. Just me. That's all any of us really wants." The room fell quiet. "I know the world will try to make you smaller, and you're going to be misunderstood a lot, but don't let it harden you. Let it shape you. That's how you lead." Afterward, one of the students asked to take a photo. Veronica agreed. As they stood together, he whispered, "My mom's a bus driver. She cried watching your speech." Veronica nodded. "Tell her I said thank you." She walked him out herself, one hand resting loosely at her side, the other on the briefcase that had once hit the floor of an airport. That briefcase hadn't changed, but everyone else had. And just like that, the lesson was no longer hers alone. It belonged to anyone willing to listen. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag later that evening. Long after the building had emptied and the halls grew quiet, Veronica stayed behind. Her office light was the only one still glowing on the 8th floor. She sat with her blazer draped over the back of the chair, sleeves rolled again, reading glasses in one hand, a folder in the other. Not a single noise interrupted her focus, except the soft hum of the air system and the occasional click of a file being turned. But her mind wasn't really in those files. Not anymore. Her eyes drifted to a photo frame on her desk, a black and white shot of her at 23, standing on the steps outside the FBI Academy at Quantico. That was the day her mother called crying. "You really did it," she'd said. Asterisk, "You really kicked the damn door down." Asterisk, Veronica hadn't cried that day. Not then. She was too focused on proving it wasn't a fluke. But she remembered what it felt like, walking those halls that first week. Tight knots in her stomach, eyes on her back, people calling her Ellison like it was a challenge instead of a name. Her shoes were scuffed. Her salary, small, but she moved like someone who belonged. Because she had to. There had been whispers, cold shoulders, even outright disrespect in classrooms. One instructor had once accidentally skipped over her name during firearm certification. She corrected him, loud and clear. He never skipped it again. She carried all of that, quietly, year after year. There were nights she doubted if it was worth it. Nights she went home, kicked off her heels, and sat on the floor just to feel grounded. But every setback, every insult, every time someone talked over her in a meeting, she stored it, not to get even, but to get here. Her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder for 6:45 a.m. Asterisk breakfast meeting with task force committee. Asterisk. She silenced it, then opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside, neatly stacked, were files from her earliest cases. Gang violence investigations in Kansas City. Missing persons from northern Nevada. A counterintelligence sting in El Paso that nobody believed she could lead until she did. And underneath them all, folded neatly, a letter from her father. He wrote it on the day she became deputy director. It read, Asterisk, they will test you. They will question how you got here. Asterisk, make them question how they ever thought you couldn't. She read it twice, then closed the drawer. There was nothing sentimental about the way she worked. She didn't operate on pride. She didn't need the world's approval. But every so often, in the stillness of an empty office, she let herself remember, not out of nostalgia, but to remind herself how much had been taken from women like her in silence, and how much louder her presence had become because she stayed. At 11:18 p.m., she finally stood. She put on her blazer, clicked off the light, and locked the door behind her. The corridor lights cast long shadows as she walked toward the elevator. The click of her heels echoed against the marble floors. As the door slid shut behind her, she let out a single, quiet breath. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just stood there, head high, shoulders square, director of the FBI. And no one could take that from her now, because what they saw in an airport didn't define her, but what she did next. That's what history would remember.